Well, with over 75 homicides in Toronto this year, gun violence has reached a crisis point, and that's why two community leaders are appealing to the Minister of Health to adopt a new bill that will declare gun violence a public health issue. Mitzie Hunter joins me now, MPP for Scarborough-Guildwood. Zora Rahman also joining me, Director of Anti-Racism, Equity, Inclusion and Community at YouthLink. But great to have you both on the program.
It's great to be here, Angie. Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. Zora, let me start with you first. Talk to us about how gun violence, is currently impacting the city. We know that it has been a huge issue for quite a while, but it feels like there's been an uptick.
Yeah, for sure. We are seeing higher rates of gun violence, and we're seeing how it's really impacting communities. There are no more safe zones out there, Families, mothers, folks are scared to be out in community, to be outside, and there's no supports for gun violence victims, right? Folks reach out after being shot for counseling, and there's really nothing available for them. So we're seeing young people trying to deal with trauma, depression, anxiety around gun violence on their own, right? Which is going to lead to higher rates of substance abuse, domestic violence, and other issues of violence in the community.
And as you pointed out there are no safe zones. It appears that it's literally happening everywhere. Mitzie, I want to bring you in on this. You're looking to put forward a bill, the Safe and Health Communities Act. Talk to me more about that and the importance of highlighting why gun violence needs to be considered to be a public health issue.
Absolutely. When we look at the rates of violence, we see that there is a steady uptick. We have 17 more homicide cases in Toronto alone than we did at this time last year. And, many of those are as a result of gun violence. So the violence is becoming more deadly, and we must take action to break the cycle of violence that we see in our community. It's not just the effects of the direct victim that is involved. It's the whole community that is traumatized when we see gun violence happen. So my private member's bill, which I will be putting forward on Wednesday, will look at gun violence from a public health lens. How do we get to the root cause of violence? When there is an incident that occurs, how do we bring resources that will help the community to heal through a public health lens?
Zora, talk to me more about that public health lens, like that community lens, and how all of this is affecting BIPOC communities, affecting marginalized communities who are already dealing with a lack of resources and support.
For sure, we are seeing that there are higher rates. Talking to Louis from Zero Gun Violence the other day, talking about how your postal code shouldn't be a factor in terms of you being a victim of gun violence. And going back to Mitzie's proposed bill, I think having resources in hospital, right? Because right now that is still a safe zone. And talking to young men that have been shot, they feel like they're stitched up and the hospital's ready to send them home the same day, right? So having more supports in hospital and also more supports in community, right? I think that addressing poverty, addressing, issues that are happening at school, issues that are happening in our provincial prisons will definitely have an impact on the gun violence that's happening on the streets of Toronto.
Yeah, absolutely, indeed. And linked with all of that, Mitzie, the pandemic and the pandemic sort of putting people in a much more vulnerable situation. And that links, as you say, this needs to be this needs to be labeled as a public health issue, gun violence being a big part of that.
Yeah, we can do this, Angie, as a community. The police are telling us that they can't do it alone. We need the whole community involved. In my riding of Scarborough-Guildwood, there have been 7 shootings in the last month alone. And this has to stop. I've visited community. I've seen the mothers crying, not because their child is directly involved, but because of where they live in proximity to the violence. And this trauma is spreading to the community, and we need resources and supports to stop it. This is actually an investment in our community, because we know that these childhood experiences have catastrophic events later on, whether it's education or employment outcomes. So it is in our best interest to make these investments really upstream at the beginning, not later on when the violence has occurred.
You're presenting the bill on Wednesday. We'll be keeping a close eye on that. I would love to get the both of you back to talk more, depending on, of course, of the outcome either way. Mitzie Hunter, Zora Rahman, thank you both for giving me your time today. We'll speak again soon.